Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter, or of course you can subscribe to the channel. Let's talk boxing. By popular demand, I'm bringing you guys a technical breakdown video, preview and prediction for the problem child, Jake Paul, against TNT Tommy Fury. Well, let's talk about it. Let's get into Jake Paul first and foremost. One of the things I can tell you is that regardless of what your abilities are in terms of your amateur level or your skill set, power is power. And this is a very good athlete, and he certainly carries some real lightning in that right hand. He likes to throw it with a loop, as you can see, but at a distance. So it's not a tight right hook. It's almost like a long right hand with a loop on it, almost like a Deontay Wilder type of right hand. The difference is with a Deontay Wilder, he has a lot more coverage. He steps into it. Whereas a guy like Jake Paul, he seems to like to have his feet below him. And the torque comes almost like a baseball pitcher where he's throwing that right hand and torques his upper body torso with it, and that back foot can come off the floor often as he's doing it, which can be problematic in other areas, but the power seems to be real. How does he move around the ring though? This is obviously an important thing. Well, one of the things we learned when he fought Anderson Silva is that he had a bit of a problem when he was chasing Anderson Silva, and one of those issues was that his feet are a little bit too wide to start with. So as his wide stance is already wide, as you can see, if Anderson Silva wants to come in, because he's lent his weight onto that back foot, that's okay. You can wait to try and lure him in. A guy like Krzysztof Glowacki can do that. Even Canelo Alvarez can often use that approach. But because Anderson Silva was not willing to engage and give up the pocket, instead of Jake Paul narrowing his stance and then coming closer with his feet before he launches his attack, from that existing wide stance, he was actually trying to widen it further and launch himself into the jab, into that lead jab in order to initially engage. The problem with doing this is that when you start to overcommit with it, your balance is affected. As you can see there with that jab against Tyron Woodley, by the time you pull out, it requires a reset. You can see there, caught with a little jab from Silva. And Silva is not exactly explosive and young. He's of a certain age now, so he couldn't capitalize on this. But a younger guy who's going to be on the edge of range and he's going to say, okay, the minute you fall short, I'm coming back at you quickly with something hard, could really cause Jake Paul problems if he's making these sorts of errors. Ultimately, he's trying to set up that right hand. And as you can see from that last left hand there, this applies to a southpaw. Obviously, Tommy Fury is not a southpaw, but let's just rewind that for a second. What you can see is that as Anderson Silva rotates away from that right hand, it causes Jake Paul a problem. Now, from here, like I said, if Anderson Silva was to come back in, Jake Paul would be in serious trouble. But even if we ignore that, because he's on the outside of that lead shoulder, what can Jake Paul really throw from here? Apart from a timid sort of jab, he can't reach him with the right hand. The left hook, because he's already sort of on the outside of that lead shoulder, is kind of out of bounds. So he sort of slaps with the left hook and misses it with it wildly. But the point I'm making here is that because of his problematic footwork, he can often launch attacks from too far out, and he's not really comfortable with a mobile target. He wants to be able to get close enough to let go of those looping shots. And you can see there, he threw the right hand there with a little bit of a straighter angle on it. But because Anderson Silva sees it coming, he's throwing it from too far out, he literally just turns his head, rubbernecking as it's called, and Jake Paul misses. How about when Jake Paul is on the retreat? Because he's athletic, he's actually not slow in terms of his retreat. One of the problems that he has is that he expends a lot of unnecessary energy. You can see how a lot of these movements are quite big, exaggerated movements, and there's almost a panic in his in the way he carries himself. Like there, he threw the jab, and as he's throwing the jab, he's in the middle of running. It's almost as though he's trying to throw the jab just to create some separation because there's a bit of a panic there. You can see that Jake is not comfortable. And another problem that he has, and even there you saw, he got caught with the short left hand and then the uppercut. So it's not even as though he's running away and then being successful at maintaining the range and then only engaging on his terms. And one of the other problems that he has is that he's not really able to punch off of that back foot. You see him here pouring with the jab, but as Anderson steps in, look at the positioning of Jake Paul's body. He's not in a position to fire back. And again, that left hook lands in the right hand to the body. Here you see Jake Paul changes the direction, high guard, covering up. He's almost prepared for impact. He's not trying to lure Anderson Silva onto a shot. He's just covering up, seeking to survive essentially. And the clinch there, as you can see, it's okay to control the tempo like that, but Anderson Silva starts to pat him and starts trash talking at this point, saying, come on, let's go, let's go, let's go, because it's the second round and he's feeling as though Jake is not comfortable with that tempo anyway. This clip's particularly funny because you've got Anderson Silva here, really low, very wide stance, which makes him a little bit immobile with his feet. He's trolling Jake Paul here. And look how tentative Jake is to actually commit to any punches here. Anderson Silva's not a threat here. But Jake Paul's uneasy about him not being a stable target and about him not being straight in front of him to be able to throw a punch. So as he starts to move towards Jake Paul starts to back away because he doesn't like this. He's uncomfortable. And from there, he just pushes Anderson Silva away because he wants to get him away, create some separation. Here, Anderson Silva almost threatens to throw a headbutt. And watch how Jake Paul flinches. There, and he gets away. He's not sitting there thinking, you know what, I'm going to move away and then lure him onto a shot. He's thinking, I'm going to cover up, get away, so that I can later on re-establish my base beneath me and exchange on my terms. Tyron Woodley actually makes some more serious errors than Anderson Silva, and Jake Paul still isn't in a position, even though his feet are narrower in this particular fight, to be able to fire back when Tyron Woodley chases him out. And he didn't look to capitalize on these reckless entries from Tyron Woodley. Look at him there. He's practically walking in. He's begging to be caught square on. And is Jake Paul thinking at all offensively? No. Now, there is then one exception to the rule, and that is the Nate Robinson knockout, whereby Robinson did come forward. But although he was on his way forward when he got knocked out, Jake Paul was able to have his base beneath him. He wasn't moving backwards quickly. The problem is when you put him onto that back foot, it becomes quite difficult because he's moving backwards almost too quickly to find that base. And you see there, the right hand lands from Tyron Woodley. But watch what happens here for Jake Paul to have a little bit of success. Rather than Tyron follow him in and then get right up close and collapse the pocket, tying him up, or resetting by getting back out like he has done here, but then being prepared for Jake to come back in so he can take a step back so that he can't come close. Instead, he sets his feet, he plants, has that high guard. He's almost saying to him, okay, now Jake, it's your turn. So Jake's able to walk around and exchange on his terms. There you go. So let's look at Tommy Fury a little bit. Well, one of the things we know that Tommy Fury can do is keep it long. Whether he's jabbing and moving, or whether he wants to punch at range and sort of be on the front foot, but punch long, powerful punches, he's capable of doing it. He's better at the former rather than the latter. In fact, one of the problems he has in terms of not being a particularly destructive fighter is that when he needs to box long and get on the front foot and be really offensive, he needs some work there. But when it comes to being defensive and getting on that back foot, he's actually quite decent. You can see there, that was an example of him sort of putting his foot on the gas a little bit and then taking a little bit of a step back again there. So if he's able to prod and poke away at Jake Paul with that lead hand, Jake hasn't really shown me the footwork to suggest that he's going to be able to follow Tommy Fury out and to be able to start catching him consistently. So Tommy Fury is going to want to keep it long, but because of those stamina issues potentially that we were talking about, whereby if you get Jake Paul on the back foot, he's expending a lot of unnecessary energy with really exaggerated herky-jerky movements. He's not relaxed as he's moving. If he can get on the front foot behind a long jab and a long right hand and apply foot pressure, it could force Jake Paul to work even when he's not punching. So there's an area that Tommy Fury may seek to capitalize on. The other thing though, when you cannot evade your opponent, when he is going to get certainly close to you at some point, because it's just part of boxing, right? It's the nature of the sport. Because of the looping trajectory of that right hand, he can use a stiff arm defense on the exit. That's where you keep your arm extended. I'll show you in a moment. Or up close, once you've gone to work, you need to initiate a clinch. And you can see Tommy Fury has that in his locker. You see there how he threw that left hand up just as his opponent sought to step in there to throw the right hand. And you see it again here, right? His opponent is going to seek to engage with a jab and then throw that looping right hand. Something that Jake Paul likes to do a lot and delivers a lot of power from it. And I just want you to watch the lead arm of Tommy Fury. He throws the jab out there, but there's no real intent to land something big. What he's done is turned over the shoulder, as you can see it. So his hand's almost pointing down, and he's turned his head away. And this cuts off the trajectory towards the chin. The chin is behind the shoulder. It's hiding behind the shoulder and the bicep. This is something that Tyson Fury had a lot of success against Deontay Wilder doing in their second fight. But as you do this, you have to also step out to avoid then the left hand coming up from there afterwards. But the point is, you can see it there. He misses and he steps out, he keeps that stiff arm out, and his opponent can't get close to him. We see it again here, stiff arm to control, but because he's gone back up against the ropes now, although he can see that right hand, he can't necessarily be 100% sure that this won't come underneath that arm. He can't escape, he can't move away from it. He can't also guarantee that something powerful is not going to come to the body here. So what does Tommy Fury do? he changes the level, and then he comes back in for the clinch. Very good stuff there from Tommy, and he's going to need to do that to take away that looping right hand from Jake Paul. Additionally to that, when he's on the front foot, when he wants to walk down Jake Paul, there are going to be moments where they come together, or he's going to want to throw a short power shot. Now, when he does that, I like the idea of him initiating a clinch after his work. Kind of like a Bernard Hopkins type of thing. Something that Tyson Fury is also very good at doing. And this is the thing, his brother is very good at these sorts of things. So I've got no doubt that they would have been working with each other in camp on these sorts of things. But you can see there, he throws the hook to the body and initiates a clinch. Steps back, right hand initiates the clinch. You see again there, jab, as his opponent bends down, he lands to the side of the temple and initiates a clinch. In other words, you don't want to be in a position where you are mid-range exchanging with Jake Paul, because if he does catch you with a right hand on the temple, he can take you out. You could be sitting there schooling him and suddenly you get caught. He's got that power. So what you want to do is keep it long, expose the fact that he's got some problems with his feet and struggles to chase you down and close the range and do X, Y, and Z. But in the moments where he does get close, be prepared to essentially change the level. Don't let your back go up against the rope so there's no escape route. If you need to escape, you see that right hand come in, use that stiff arm defense, step out. Don't step out in straight lines. And then when you exchange on the inside, land 1 or 2 shots, then initiate a clinch to stop Jake Paul from working in those areas. Now, Tommy Fury, though, is not a perfect fighter. He himself is susceptible to some shots. And one of the problems that he's got is that when he fought Jordan Grant, who's not too dissimilar stylistically from Jake Paul, and shout out to Mick2225 on Twitter, by the way, for making the point that he sees some similarities there stylistically. The only thing is, I would say, Mick, is that you referred to Jake Paul as a poor man's Jordan Grant. And I can understand to an extent why you said that, in the sense that there's a more novice-y feel about him. Jordan Grant was slightly better at getting his feet in closer before launching his shots and stuff like that. However, he doesn't carry anywhere near the sort of power that Jake Paul has. Jordan Grant is now 6-0-2 in terms of his boxing record, but he hasn't got any knockout wins at all. So Jake Paul certainly carries some lightning in that right hand, and perhaps Tommy Fury got away with certain things here against Jordan Grant that he wouldn't be able to get away with against the likes of Jake Paul. But there's certainly a stylistic element here where you can learn a little bit by watching this particular fight. But what you'll see here is that he gets caught over the top of that jab. Why? Because after he's landed, he's stayed stationary and he stayed upright. This is something he's going to have to be very careful of, because as you see again there, towards the back, his back on the ropes, there's nowhere else to escape. He gets caught. There he actually got caught in the second phase attack with a rising left hand. It's not the right hand, but even when it is that left hand, it can then bring another attack that comes from there. But it's always a problem for him when he gets his back up on the ropes. Now, in that particular sequence there, the opponent doesn't actually land. And I want you to look at that here from slow motion. But you see, one of the problems that Tommy has is that ultimately he's trying to line up the guy for the uppercut, but he's cocked it. So he's essentially telegraphing it. And by telegraphing that particular shot, the opponent sees it. So as he enters, he ducks down and look at the positioning of his lead hand. He's trying to cut off the uppercut here. He's aware of what Tommy Fury is trying to do. Tommy Fury lands on the glove, does get through, clips him, but it's taken the power off the punch. The punch landed on the glove of the opponent. It didn't affect him. But now look how upright Tommy Fury is with no exit. And so this guy, Grant, is prepared to throw that right hand. As he throws the right hand, looping right hand, the danger shot of Jake Paul, Tommy Fury's aware now, and he turns his head, which is a good thing. He's turning away from this shot, but he's in a very dangerous position. The shot skims his face. Instantly, knowing that Tommy is in a dangerous position here for the left hand, something we spoke about earlier, after you evade that right hand, it's a potential danger if you're not exiting. He instantly changes the levels to come down and duck underneath what he knows is coming as a left hand. So this is good work from Tommy to salvage the situation. But the fact of the matter is, he was on the ropes with nowhere to go, as you can see. And as you can see from this clip as well, Tommy Fury's not really biomechanically set up for that uppercut. He's got such long arms. For him to throw an uppercut, he really needs to squat his legs and almost bring that shot down from the ground. You're not going to throw a short uppercut. And so you've got to be very careful when you use this type of shot, because you're leaving the entire side of one side of your face exposed. And you don't want to be getting caught with something because you kept your chin up in the air. And if you look at that uppercut as well, look at where his left hand was when he was delivering that uppercut. Look how low that is. So even if you land the uppercut, imagine you'd thrown the uppercut and your opponent also threw one of those looping right hands and you landed on each other. You're not getting the better of that exchange. And from this position here, you can see the back angle, the reverse angle of what we were talking about before. You see how his back is up against the ropes? He needs to be able to avoid the ropes. And when he does, he's got to not worry so much about setting up these big uppercuts where he's got a leading hand low. And he's got to be more concerned about, how do I tie up this guy? How do I change the levels, come in low and tie him up? Something that Eubank also failed to do against Liam Smith, and Hatman touched upon in his video, and that got him knocked out too. So if I'm in the camp of Jake Paul, I would have been working on narrowing his feet, cutting off the ring and getting close before launching my attacks. In other words, I'd want to cut off the ring and corner him into areas where he's up on the ropes, up against the turnbuckle, and then I go to work, rather than trying to launch in with these big jabs whereby he's stepping into the jab and leaving himself exposed. Even if it means getting behind a high guard and trying to walk this guy down who moves better than you, that's fine, as long as you've worked on cutting off the ring to force him into areas where you can work and he can't. So how do I see this fight going? Listen, Jake Paul, with the power that he has, and I do think he is a puncher, he's going to have a puncher's chance against anyone with that looping right hand. However, I think he's very limited in the way he delivers that right hand. I think he needs his feet below him. And I think Tommy Fury is far too good a mover and far too elusive for Jake Paul to be able to have consistent success with that right hand. So unless Tommy Fury's making these errors, and unless he hasn't worked on being able to stay off the ropes and it starts to happen consistently, I think Jake Paul's going to really struggle to close the range on Tommy Fury. And if that's the case, I believe Tommy Fury would make this look pretty easy, to be honest with you, this fight. I think he's going to look comfortable if he stays disciplined and he gets his tactics right. However, there's been a lot of pressure from the Fury family talking about how they're going to knock Jake Paul out. If he loses to Jake Paul, he's got to change his name. He's going to be disowned by the family. You had John Fury trying to accept the bet that if Tommy Fury loses, he loses his $5 million, something which apparently the Furies have now gone quiet about. And I'll come back to that in a moment, by the way. But the point is, there's a lot of pressure here on Tommy Fury, and he seems furious. You look at the face-off, you look at the weigh-in, he's angry. Now, when you're angry, you might not want to box and poke and keep it long and be disciplined. You might want to get in there and want to break this guy's face, but that's what he wants you to do. So from a psychological perspective, Jake Paul's played the blinder here. Tommy can't be stupid. He has to be intelligent and not emotional. If you're going to want to walk him down on the back foot, keep it long. If you want to move away, keep it long and exit the pocket. The point is, you keep it long. If Jake Paul comes inside and you have to exchange 1 or 2 shots and then clinch if you can. Do not allow this guy to start throwing those looping right hands at you, because he could get lucky at any point. Now, in terms of that bet, by the way, that's another psychological ploy from Jake Paul. Jake Paul is earning a lot more than the reported $5 million that Tommy Fury would be earning. And Jake Paul's already a very wealthy guy. So the fact of the matter is, it's kind of like having a bet with a professional football player from the Premier League. If you put down a £2,000 bet on a particular outcome, he makes that in a few seconds. He's not going to feel any pressure from that bet. Whereas you're going to be nervous about losing your £2,000. So it adds added pressure. It puts the guy under pressure. Why isn't Jake Paul saying, I'll put down 100% of my purse and you put down 100% of your purse? That wouldn't be great psychological warfare. That's a straight up gamble. And even then, is it really a gamble that you want when you're up against an A-side fighter in Jake Paul in such a dirty sport? Let's say everybody thinks that Tommy Fury won the fight on points, but they give it to Jake Paul. Well, you've just signed a contract that if you lose the fight, you give over your $5 million. So no way should Tommy Fury sign that contract under any circumstance. You've got to not be a slave to public opinion. Don't be weak and be worried about what they're going to say and cuss you and, oh, see, you're not confident and all that stuff. Don't be a slave to public opinion. Laugh it off and say, don't worry, I'm happy with my $5 million and I'll be very happy sitting on a beach in Tahiti or wherever, drinking my cocktails after I've sparked you out. And you can keep the extra $5 million that you want to bet with me. Don't worry about it. That's how he's got to play it. But the point is, he's been very smart, Jake Paul, at applying that sort of pressure. And is it possible that Tommy Fury will not box an intelligent fight as a result? But these are speculative issues. This is a fact of the matter is, I believe that Jake Paul has a puncher's chance and Tommy Fury should be winning this fight fairly comfortably if he gets his tactics right and he keeps his head about him and he can manage the occasion. Let me know what you think, ladies and gents. Please leave your comments in the comment section down below. If you like the video, don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. Thanks for watching. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.